We'll go ahead and open the workshop session. First item is discussion and presentation of substandard properties. And Becky is our everything tonight, so we'll give her a moment to get in shape.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. So Mr. Ellett and I will be going through some substandard housing with you. If you were to recall back in November when we had an actual City Council workshop session, we went through and defined what our priorities were going forward for the comprehensive plan. So substandard is defined as needing improvement and disrepair and may be considered a nuisance or unsafe to the community. Code enforcement has been identified as one of the City Council priorities as an actionable item from the comprehensive plan to strengthen enforcement and incentives throughout the city to maintain the quality of neighborhood character and renovate older structures in disrepair. This presentation is a representation of those properties that meet this initiative. So I don't want to read this all to you, but this is out of our Code of Ordinance, Chapter 18, the buildings and the building regulations. So this kind of defines what the dangerous building or structure would be and what defines the requirements that we do for the safety precautions. So whether then we have them boarded up, whether we have them actually have to improve the area, if the structure is unsafe, if there's unsafe equipment, meaning the utility pole or the utilities that are connected to it, and then the unsafe building or structure itself. So I don't want to go through all the definitions with you, but that is what's cited in this Code of Ordinance that I've given you a little snapshot of. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through about 38 structures and just kind of show you different various homes that Mr. Ellett and Mr. Blair went through the city over the last few weeks. And they're just pictures. We don't have any data to back them up at this point, but they're pictures. And then while I do that, Mr. Ellett is going to go through and explain to you the process of how we cite them and move forward with getting them repaired.
Thank you, Becky. Evening, Council, Mayor. I'd like to take the opportunity to kind of get you informed as what we do whenever we locate these structures and how we go about taking them down. Article 3, Section 18, subsections 241 to 318, City of Lampasas ordinances. First, we identify it, often by complaint, fire, theft of service, decay, or neglect. Whatever it is, there's a number of ways it can be identified. We inspect it, determine to be 50% or more or not feasible to repair, unsafe to inhabit. And at that point in time, the owner's responsible for installing a fence 10 foot around it. Does that always happen? No, but that's what the process should be. Commencement of proceedings will take place after that. I shall obtain a date in time for a public hearing before the Construction Board of Adjustment and Appeals. And then notice of hearing will be sent out to the owner, lien holder, mortgagee. And after that, 10 calendar days of the hearing, after 10 days of calendar days of that hearing, will personally deliver or certified mail the owner. And at that problem, we'll start our due diligence process if they're difficult to find and continue with the public hearing. Evidence will be presented by both sides and the board will make a ruling. At that point, they'll have 30 days to take it down and no more than 90 days or remove the structure.
And this is the Board of...
Construction Board of Adjustment and Appeals.
And they only meet when they need to. They don't meet on a monthly basis. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
You have anything else? Okay. Do you have any questions?
I'm sure we will.
Excellent. Thank you.
At this juncture, what we kind of had in mind is we were going to go through and prioritize these structures and kind of do an inventory of the condition of each of them and identify how we're going to prioritize them going forward. We're going to send them all letters letting them know that they do need to come into compliance, board up, clean up, whatever the case may be. But these are the ones that we have identified, the ones that look, that need the most attention at this time. But like I said, we've identified at least 38 of them that we've seen throughout the city, and this is all over the city. There is no one general area, but like I said, we will start the notification process, and then we'll go from there.
And these homes are vacant?
Yes, these are that you're showing. There was 43 actual homes identified. 6 of them, we did find that they do have utilities on. They're still living there. So I did not include them in the PowerPoint. So I did take those out, and then we just wanted to present this to you so you can kind of show what the inventory looks like. And this is one that he was talking about where we had the fire most recently. So we're working on these as well because these, of course, are a safety hazard.
So at this point, we don't have a whole lot of data. We don't know who the owners are. We haven't got that much information yet, but
Right,
you're
because
going
that's
to.
what our next step will be, is we'll go through and identify through the appraisal district who owns the properties. We'll send them a certified letter, letting them know that their house needs to be improved or boarded up. It needs to be, brought up to code, depending on the circumstances. But that'll be based on an actual, it's basically a checklist. We'll go through and identify that, the structure needs to be repaired, there's falling awning, there is, electricity's not safe. We'll go through the whole thing and decide these are the things that need to be improved in that area, and then depending on the response we get back from the owner, we'll work with them going forward, or we'll start the process going through the construction board to condemn it, being that it's substandard and it needs to be come down.
Okay, and the timing on the letter, but once the letter is received, how much time does the owner
I
have?
believe the initial letter, we normally will give them 30 days to respond, and then we might send an additional follow-up letter or try calling them if we don't get a response. Sometimes they're out of town. They don't live here. Like, they may have property here, but they're not in Texas. So sometimes it takes us a little longer. We just have to do our due diligence and try to find them. So I think we have to put 2 publications in the newspaper notifying them that we're trying to reach out to them and find the owners of this parcel. And then we have to make certified letter attempts. We have to try to call them. So we have a checklist we have to go through to make sure all the notification has been made. And then at that time, depending on the condition, if it's more than 50% and it has to come down, there's no way we can repair it, then we may go to the construction board at that time for them to deem that they do feel that staff has made that right recommendation that it does need to come down.
Okay. Anyone have questions?
And after you've exhausted all of these, the process here, the building does come down, you still don't have a ownership, what part does the city play at that point?
Typically, if we can't find the ownership and we actually go through that situation, we have to cite them, I believe, and it'll go through the courts as far as the lien on the property, other things that we can do to try to recoup some of those costs that we incurred. But we have to do our due diligence. We have to make sure we've exhausted everything trying to find them and locate the owner of that property.
Is that through municipal or district court if it gets to that point?
I think it starts with municipal. I'm almost positive.
Okay,
It's an ordinance violation.
okay.
I might just add a couple of things. When Becky says, secure, board up, but we just want to make it clear to you that boarding up is not compliance. Boarding up is protection for safety in the interim until such time as compliance can be met. So we're not telling people, well, if you just board those windows up, then it makes it all right. No, it doesn't. That's just a safety concern. The notifications that we have to send out are going to be fairly tedious. We have to apply the definitions from the ordinance to the condition of the house. So if it is a listing wall, we have to say that the east wall of this house is listing X number of degrees. If it's not weatherproof, we have to tell them why it's not weatherproof. So the notification, it's a notice of violation, that has to match to the letter the language in the ordinance. So it can be a very tedious process. You might have one with 3 ways it's out of compliance, and a finding by the building official that it cannot be repaired. And so it will be individual to each property.
And Frank, how quickly will you start the process?
Tomorrow. We've been processing the structures at this point, and we'll be prioritizing them tomorrow, and I assume those will probably be out next week.
Anybody else have any comments or concerns? Thank you both. Next item, discussion regarding the skate park signage.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. Good news, the SPA skate park folks should be on the boots on the ground next Wednesday. We were hoping they'd be here this week. They have got the fence up now around what the actual base pad is. So they'll be bringing in some Connex boxes. We're waiting for those to come in. It has some of their concrete equipment and forms and things such as that. But one of the things that they brought up to us and really wanted to make sure that we had guidance on is trying to think in advance before the skate park is totally complete. Once they remove that fence, the skate park will basically be open to the public. There's no way to keep folks off of that. So this item is really a discussion and direction, but we have some examples that they've provided us. Becky Sims, our city secretary, has reached out to the Parks Board. They've given some feedback to us as far as what some of the rules that we were showing, and they feel like fit for Lampasas. But some of the things, just to kind of read over, some of the things that they'd thrown out, which was uses is intended for skateboards, BMX, freestyle bikes, be responsible. This park is not supervised. Safety first, helmets and other protective gear recommended. Be respectful of others. Clean up after yourself. Please no gum, food, or drinks on the surface, as well as our other applicable rules that are already in place for parks. I know one of the concerns is as well as the art in the park, Campbell Park, and making sure that that's protected. So we may need to put some notes with some extra signage, just outside of the skate park as well. But in reality, there's a couple examples that they've done. So the city of Bernie and the city of McKinney both followed some of these rules, as well as the one thing that we do have to make sure we've got Chapter 75 from the Title 75 from the state law in there that kind of governs what can be, inline skates and skateboards and those types of things would be actually on the sign. And I'd be open to any questions. I think that was kind of covered most of kind of where we're at.
Just one question. Once we get to the point where it's completed, I wonder what us as a city, including the police, mindset would be when it came to art on the structure itself. Because you know as well as I do,
Right.
we're going to have, which depends how we look at it. Are we going to allow art on there? Are we going to try to fight graffiti? Are we going to try to not encourage that? And so that's something of discussion that, I've talked about even in my office with some of them are pretty good at graphic art.
Right.
Clean graphic art,
Right.
but graphic art. And so I just wonder if we should address that, maybe not now, but in the future,
Right.
about maybe if everyone's in compliance or in agreeing to maybe allow that in a clean environment. I don't know what the city's view would be as far as a cohesive unit on that.
So, Councilman Keel, we actually met with the our TML risk pool manager that works directly with us. A lot of those things were brought up. I think the biggest thing, and you see that on some skate parks where there is some, sort of mural or something they use spray paint on. I think one of the biggest things to think about is, is that if that's the direction that staff's given, that's okay. I think that the issue is really trying to monitor what kind of paint's used, because it changes the surface, the grip, and all those things, on a concrete surface that could make it more slippery, or, cause other injuries. But I think at this point, we're, leaning towards managing it like we do everything else in the parks, where there's no graffiti and,
If we did, I guess if we were gonna encourage that, almost set it up like some kind of contest or something like that, where they could take, like, kids using it could take pride in it, and it'd be under the guidelines and regulations of the right paint and whatnot. But if that was gonna happen, I guess we would probably control that.
right. Yeah, I think it needs to be controlled if that's the direction, we decide to go.
One of the things that's been brought up is at one point, LAFTA had Bobby Star paint the basketball court. And something that has been brought to our attention after the fact is that the paint on the court actually made it harder for the players to play. It made it slippery. So I really don't think that a graffiti area on a skate park where they're already sliding around may not be the best plan.
maybe a wall concrete behind it so they can at least release their artistic. And some of that graffiti is extremely talented work. They do good work.
We actually had some contests there in the city of San Angelo because we were having graffiti issues. But with the right type of paint or, you know, some of them were wrapped, our traffic signal cabinets, we had some contests. So it's similar to that, you know, who had the best art. And we let them put it on the traffic signal cabinets, you know, at intersections. So, I mean, that's always an opportunity, but I think you'd have to stay within the constraints and give them guidelines if you do that on what type of paint they could use and where they could actually use it, you know, so they know where.
Are there plans for cameras out in Campbell Park? Do you have any now? I don't think so.
I would like to see cameras in Campbell Park. I think that's a great question. With some of the things that we had going on at Brook Park as far as some vandalism this year, we actually did get cameras on trailers. They were very beneficial. And it may be something, if council wishes, we could bring that back. I know that Monica's done some work years past to try to put together a full, you know, range of the city of Lampasas and where cameras would make the most sense. But I believe at that park it probably would if we had cameras that were monitored.
I'm glad y'all brought up cameras because that's something that I've asked that we might put on a future, like the next possible workshop agenda, is to discuss cameras in all the parks.
And at one point, Wings of Eagles was going to take some sort of responsibility for the skaters as a group, perhaps. Are we still in talks with them that they could monitor some of the activities?
I haven't reached out to them. I don't know that anybody at the city's been in contact recently. Of course, it's not quite there yet, but we can reach out, definitely. We probably do need to touch base with the Wings of Eagles just to let them know, you know, kind of where things are and if
Yeah, that way they'll know.
collaborate on something.
We'll be looking at them if anything goes terribly wrong.
Are there any other questions?
Thanks, Ryan. Next item is discussion regarding the interceptor study.
Mayor, Council. The next item is one that I know Councilman Coleman's been very passionate about, being in the public works realm and making, okay, thank you. And making sure that we're, you know, being good stewards of the storm drain and the storm sewer systems we have currently. The interceptor study, which was completed a couple of years ago, was one that Eckerman Engineering did for the city. It looked at a lot of different kind of scenarios, but what I've got in the packet, this first slide, just to give kind of an overview of how this study or this analysis was done. I wanted to make sure that everybody had that. I know we've gone over this in the past, but the overview is the, you know, basic peak factor that was calculated using the existing data, which the data that we have currently is actually at the plant. We don't have any way to monitor things out in the field as the inflow comes into the plant. We monitor that, and that's really, as we move through this, is some of the data that we're, you know, we'll need direction from council on is to move that forward. SCADA information, which I mentioned at the entry point, and the actual flow data that's there. And one of the things that we're really looking at on the broad overall scope of this is the peak wet weather flow, or the PWWF. That's the critical thing that we're trying to define. So we've talked about infiltration and inflow before, which is common in systems with older types of clay pipe, where roots get into the system, or there's open cleanouts that aren't covered. There's a lot of things that can bring that kind of to fruition, I guess you'd say. The overall map, I just wanted to make sure, since we haven't talked about this project in a while, that everybody understood where the different interceptors were. So the interceptor 1 is close to the plant. It's hard to kind of see on this map. Interceptor 4 kind of runs northeast. Interceptor 2 is to the north, kind of centralized, and then you have interceptor 3, which is the main interceptor kind of south of town there, the red line. If you can see it on this map, it's kind of tough. Really the intent, what we wanted to discuss today was what the target really is. So what was identified, and just to clarify, this study or this analysis looked at the peak factors, and it was based on those numbers that I showed before for units. So for certain types of households, for all those things, those are kind of set numbers they use in their engineering study. But it did identify a couple of the interceptors that could potentially be at capacity or over capacity. And so really that's what we set back down, looked at that. And so segments 1 through 3, I'll show you on these next couple slides kind of where they were projected at. Now, just to quantify kind of an overview of this, is there's not been a time, and Van Sims, our wastewater manager's here, he can probably speak to that more, but where we had manhole covers, getting extended and moved off based on the flow. That's not a typical thing, and I'm not so sure they've seen that in Lampasas. So just to kind of give you a little bit of background on that, while it does show some of these are at capacity or over, that's not something we've typically seen, but it's what we would like to try to identify. Basically, what we would do is use the INI, which is inflow infiltration metering devices, to collect this data. We're targeting approximately 4 miles, which would be interceptor 1, 2, and 3, and the feeders that come in on the side. So all the lines that come in to monitor at the manholes, it's basically just a kind of a sonar device that's in the manhole, and it monitors that flow. Again, you want to make sure when we do the study, you would give it enough time so that we see that wet weather kind of impact when we get those large rain events, because that's really what we're looking for. We know what the flow coming into the plant is, and we know roughly in those wet weather events what we're seeing and what the differences are. But trying to identify where are the bigger issues. And one of the things we talked about a little bit is in some of the older areas of town where you do know you've got some clay pipe and some of those things have been identified in the past, is to focus and kind of prioritize that as we kind of work through that. But basically, what we would like to start with is probably, I think, around $50,000 would do those interceptors, the collectors, and give us all that data so that we can move forward with trying to, target where that INI really is and see. And basically, the existing pipe, if it should be upsized, that's something that we would be looking at. So if you don't have a lot of INI, then you would look at possibly upsizing those pipes if we're really having some capacity issues. So interceptor 1, there was 2 identified segments, and I've got it highlighted in yellow. So 1A was at 95.2%, and it's about 860 linear feet long. Again, that's that's max capacity based on the calculations that were run. Interceptor 1C is at 80.9%, and the way that they identified the various thresholds for overcapacity, to give you a little background, is over 100%, meaning the pipe won't be able to handle that. The 75% and above were things that were brought up to for not necessarily immediate, but in the future, these could be, an issue, and so that's what the yellow is. Red is showing that it is overcapacity as we get back to some of the other maps as we move forward. The total length for interceptor 1 is 7,720 linear feet. Interceptor 2, and please stop me if you've got questions on any of these. The second interceptor capacity actually has some exceedance for 2A, which is you can kind of see it at the top. That's one that I visited with Van about. It goes actually under the creek there, so there could be some INI coming in right before it gets to the plant. That could be possible. And then interceptor 2B, which is at 98.1%, it's pretty close to capacity. Total length of those is 3,600 linear feet. And move to Interceptor 3. Interceptor 3, of course, is the longest interceptor we have, and therefore you see quite a few more segments the way it's broken out. But basically 3A, 3B, 3C are all right there at that threshold, over 75% and close to 100. And then you have 3D and 3E, which are the further interceptors that are out further west. So it kind of, on 3, it kind of works out from the east to the west on those areas. So, you know, it's just something to kind of keep in mind. This one's the longest run, as I mentioned, 9,030 linear feet for this interceptor. I think that's all I've got. I'll stand for any questions.
Which ones are you looking to study first?
So the study I would like to on the target areas 1 through 3. So the interceptors 1 through 3, the ones that we're showing here. We did get an estimate. It's been several months ago, so we could put together some numbers. We feel like, you know, we would work from priority. So maybe we start at 1, we do 2. If we don't have enough to do 3, we would do segments of 3, because we want to make sure we're catching those feeder lines coming in, so that we can really identify if we have issues and where those issues are.
So these numbers here, the ones that are showing that they're over capacity, where are those numbers coming from? Like, if we have those, why are we going to do more studies rather than just going and fixing these?
So the numbers are coming from, let me back up just a little bit. That's a good question, Councilman Morris. The numbers are coming from the unit flows for the analysis. So basically what happens is it takes a pipe size, whatever that size is, and when you really drill through some of and kind of analyze the spreadsheet they put together, typically when you're seeing that overcapacity, it's looking at like an 8-inch or smaller. Well, not smaller, because anything really 8-inch and less wouldn't be an interceptor, but you see the 12-inch segments, and that's where you see these changes. So it's taking numbers from the units for gallons per day and then converting that into peak wet weather if there's some infiltration, and then it looks at that pipe size, and then it says, okay, here's what the capacity max might be for that pipe.
Maybe just to clarify, when we say overcapacity based on what you're seeing here, that's modeled overcapacity. That's not actual data. And so so we take the model and we say, okay, is there really, one of the assumptions up there is that your INI is 500 gallons per day per acre of whatever that shed area is. So the question is that, you know, we've got to go back now and validate, is what does this model mean, and is this indeed an issue? If you do the simple math on the amount of gallons per day that we have modeled versus the average actual gallons per day that we run through our plant, there's a huge disparity. So what we've got to do is now fine-tune, particularly when we have peak flows, and I think Stephen and Van talked to us about the impact of 2 open cleanouts that the caps have been removed on them in somebody's yard. And we bombed out our Oil States lift station, kept having trouble with it. Well, we had some new construction that was downline from it, and they didn't have the sewer caps on, so every time it rained, all that water would drain into the sewer. And then, so there are a lot of things like that that may be low-hanging fruit, but just now we've got to validate and try to focus on exactly where those problems may be through actual data collection.
Cool.
Do you need anything from us, Ryan?
Really just direction, if there's any direction you'd like us to take forward with this.
I think move forward with your study and come back to us.
Next steps would be we'll get cost estimates on what it would take to do that. We also need to identify the feeders coming in and know how many of those there are so we could get a good cost estimate.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item is discussion regarding the hours and programs at the animal shelter.
Mayor and council, how's everybody?
Great.
Good. Thank you all for the opportunity. Casey Swartzer, our animal control director, been with us as the director for probably 10, 11, 12 years now. 13 years almost as the director of our shelter. Just a little recap, the shelter is a group project with the county. It's on city land over here near the wastewater plant and the barn. And combination build about 13 years ago, split the cost with the county, and we split the bills monthly with the county. Casey has 2 tech assistants that work with her, so 3 employees, and we do all the administration of it. It works out pretty well. But as time goes on, things get busy and things change. Casey's done a real good job this last year working with Assistant Chief Boswell on doing some maintenance that you would think would come up with about 10 to 12 years on the building. Nothing overly expensive, but we're in really good shape. But we're also getting a little busier, aren't we? And so Casey's been letting us know that for about a year now. We get full sometimes, works very hard on adoptions and trying to work with the fostering a little bit, but not officially, and doing the best we can. Casey came to us this summer with an opportunity to go to a free 3-day training in South Carolina through the Best Friends Animal Society, which appears to be one of the largest and most well-respected national programs for trying to save as many animals as possible. And so she went on their dime for 3 days to South Carolina and came back all excited, obviously, about some things like fostering and better vet care for not only cats but for dogs, and marketing and having some programs to do the best we can to get in some more volunteers, all of this stuff. And I think they were kind of being tricky, to be honest, because about 2 months later, they contacted Casey about a possible grant in the tune of about $95,000 total. 86,000.
With the option of adding a
Little bonus there at the end if all goes well. So they get you excited, you know, and get things rolling, and then here we come with the grant. But it's not bad, because a lot of the things that the grant would like us to do with their money is things that she and I had been talking about, and Assistant Chief Boswell had, about some upgrades going into the next year, like expanding our cat cages just because of the number of animals we're getting in, and some more, you know, upgrades and some marketing and some programs. So here we are with an opportunity with this grant coming up at the same time. So we come to you with a combination of asking, you know, you're okay on a few small changes and some things that Casey would like to do in programming at the shelter, and then the grant would support a lot of these. If you don't like the grant, I don't know why, but she would still probably be able to move forward with a few of these things that wouldn't be cost prohibitive, but the grant would certainly make a lot of these things a lot easier, and it would be some things that we were going to ask for money for in the budgeting process anyway. So that's kind of where we're at and what we're looking at with a combination. The changes aren't drastic, and I'd like for her to speak on a few of these things, but to sum them up, she's talking about some hours, and she's done some research and came to us with some documentation about adjusting her hours a little bit. And she looked around at 6 of our shelters in the area to see what their hours were. And basically, she would like to have a little time where it's not open to the public in the morning and late afternoon for them to take care of some business on their own. It doesn't seem to be a problem, and it seems to be standard with the shelters in our area. Would you like to speak a little bit on that and what y'all would do at that time and how that might work?
So currently we're covering a 10-hour workday, and so we have 2 people that come in the morning and 1 person that closes alone. And I don't like anybody to be there alone, just because you never know what's going to happen with animals or with very passionate people about their animals. And so that's something we've been talking about for years, is that we've got this big 10-hour stretch that we're trying to cover with 3 people. So if we could shorten it to an 8-hour day, that way if I have to take off and there's still 2 people there at all times, closing, and they're not there alone or opening and closing by themselves. Another issue we have is that when we get there, especially on days when we're there alone, I have to take all the dogs out to go to the bathroom, feed, clean, and watch the front door, and answer the phone, and stop when someone comes in, and things like that. So it can be very hard, especially when we're down to 1 person. So allowing us to have those couple hours in the morning where we can get in, feed and clean everybody, make sure they're all situated, and then we can also spend a little bit more time with the animals so that we can kind of increase that length of stay that we can offer them, you know, where we can actually put some time towards the animals where we're not trying to have to run and check, you know, up the hallway to see if there's somebody standing at our front door. So it would kind of help us be able to spend a little more time with the animals.
What your hours to be open to the public would be?
So our staffed hours would be 9 to 5, and then our open to the public would be 11 to 4. And so then it would still work out where if someone just had to come in before those hours, we're still there, and they could schedule Or if somebody couldn't come until 4:30 or closer to 5, then we could still work it because we're still there. But it could be more like a scheduled appointment versus just having people walk in.
So let's say someone had their animal picked up at 8 o'clock in the evening while they were working an evening shift somewhere. And they got home, realized it, contacted the police department, but our patrol officer had already taken the animal and placed it in the shelter and left the information for the shelter staff. But they called and said, hey, I can only come get my animal at 7 in the morning, and then I've got to be, or, I'm sorry, y'all wouldn't be there that early. 8 in the morning, but I can't be there. You would make allotments for that person who called. So it's just the walk-in unannounced people from that time that would help them. But we certainly would go out of our way to help anybody in a hardship that needed us to be there during those times.
You just talking about one Saturday a month too?
So ideally, I would really like us to be open more Saturday, Sunday, and less during the week, like all the other shelters kind of are, because those are our key adoption days and things like that. But currently, with our number of staffing and the hours we're covering, there's no way we can, because it's really hard to alternate a 3-person schedule, you know, even if I went back onto weekends and stuff like that. So ideally, down the line, if we got additional staff, I would love to be open more on the weekend. So the thing that we could come up with now is, okay, we're gonna offer one Saturday a month where we're gonna have an event at the shelter, we're gonna be open longer, you know, we're gonna alternate who has to work that extra long Saturday to make it fair for everybody, and then give the community more involvement. So we're really wanting to focus more on that PR aspect of trying to see what the shelter can offer you, and then, you know, be able to have more adoptions and stuff on the weekends. So we have the whole year planned for the third Saturday of every month being a 9 to 3 work day.
So you always, I'm sorry, you always hate to look a gift horse in the mouth, but for this amount of money, what do you need to do to get the $86,000?
So I met with the director of Wilco, and me and her discussed what our hardships were and what the money would best go towards. So I kind of took into account what the city would be okay with us doing, and also took into account what we could continue after the grant without having to come to y'all and asking y'all for $90,000 next year.
Good.
So about the only thing that would be extending the cost, because I don't know if the breakdown is in there. Okay, because I mean, we're having a local vet that's gonna come in one day a week, and that's $10,000. So that would be something that, you know, that they'll come in and do exams, things like that. Another $10,000 for medication, spay neuter. They're adding on to the building. $25,000 of that is gonna be an add-on for the building, which is gonna be an extended cat room.
On that 10,000 for the vet, is that annually or is that monthly?
Annually.
Okay.
Yeah, she's gonna charge us, I believe it was $150 a week.
Okay.
To come in, and whatever I can fit in that hour, she will do for us. And then she's going to, it's Kelly and Tramp Bison, is who's gonna do it for us.
Right.
Also talking about them allowing us to purchase medications at cost, so that we're not paying that markup value. So we're kind of still in the terms of working all that out, but all of that medication and things will probably be kept at the vet clinic and then prescribed through the vet clinic, but we will purchase it through the grant, so that we're not spending the money that we're already spending now, just going for one animal at a time for exams, things like that. Spay neuter is also included in there, which is something that I told them I didn't know if it would be something we would continue, because that's $32,000 of the grant, just to be able to spay neuter animals in our care for adoption. So I told them that was something we could look into. We're getting a software program that will help us manage our foster and volunteer program. We're getting $5,000 to start our foster program, and that'll allow us to buy kits for the fosters to be able to have equipment to take home with their fosters. And then they're left $2,800 in there, or $28,000 in there for marketing, to be able to market our events and things like that.
So
Cat cages sorry.
Go ahead.
Cat cages was specifically one of the things that we were already talking about last spring, about interjecting into this next budget before any of this came about, because of just the number of cats that we're getting in. So that in itself would be a lot. And one thing to mention, she mentioned Williamson County, Wilco. Williamson County has been associated with the Friends for quite some time, so they would be the mentor. So the money would come to us in increments with them overseeing it. If at any point, basically, they didn't think we were doing a good job, we wouldn't get any more money. So it's not going to be a lump sum. It's going to be basically, 3 payments with Williamson County, watching, mentoring, helping, overseeing. We have to, documentation
I have
about.
to meet with them monthly, once a month, show them our intake, outtake numbers. The main goal is they're wanting us to get a 95% live release rate in a year, which scared the pants off of me when they sent me that grant, because that's a huge jump.
That's pretty drastic.
Yes, especially in the cats, because right now we're only running a 35% live release rate with cats. So going up to a 90% was huge. And so she talked me down and was like, no, this is just our goal. This is what we want to achieve. But as long as you're moving forward, they didn't see any reason why they would ever stop the grant. As long as we kept working with them and moving forward the way that we had planned out.
Sounds like a wonderful opportunity.
So, as part of that, she doesn't currently have a fostering program officially for dogs and cats. She would like, and she has two techs, mind you, both of them have specific interests, one in fostering and one with
Volunteer.
working with the volunteers. So it's really great timing. So if everybody's okay, she would like to ease in to fostering, first of all, with dogs.
Cats and kittens.
Cats and kittens
Yes.
first, I apologize. And then, as we go on with dogs, and her one tech has already done a lot of research, has gotten excited, and also, that would be that area. And then with the volunteer program, hoping to expand it a little bit. Currently, it's age 16 and above, but we would like to allow 14 and above, closely monitored, making sure all of anything that they do is age-specific, et cetera. And we believe there's a large demographic, specifically for young people at the high school level who are trying to get in some of their hours for these programs for scholarships. And again, we very closely monitored by the three ladies at the shelter, if not other adult volunteers that they work consistently with all the time. So in combination with working through fostering programs and more volunteers, it all goes hand in hand with the grant, and then allowing us some more money to hopefully accomplish some things that Casey was wanting to get accomplished anyway, which all goes towards trying to adopt out as many of these animals and minimize euthanizations in a nutshell. And I think it's kudos to Casey and her staff. They obviously were watching, ahead of time, offering her to come to this school, knowing that possibly we would be a good recipient of this hard-earned, donated nonprofit money to try to go forward with this program. So I think it says a lot about her facility and her management and her staff that we have this opportunity.
And we would like to congratulate you. Everyone's very proud of your facility.
Thank you.
We do have an action item later. Does anyone have any other questions?
So moving forward for next year, the vets, is that already budgeted, the 10,000 for the vets and the 10,000 for the medications? Or is that in addition with this grant?
So the grant would start as soon as y'all sign it. As soon as we get approval to sign it, we can start it immediately, and it would start as of 2023. So it would be for the continuous of the rest of January through December is when the grant would go into effect. So it would be now, immediate. And so I actually have a meeting with Dr. Isom this week to, get our final, this is what we're gonna do, have an SOP. Williamson County is gonna send me over their vet SOP and things like that, so we can get everything situated for that.
So is something like that, because I know, rebuilding the cat cages and all that stuff, that's kind of a one-time thing. But if this program is successful, is this a renewable grant?
The grant is not. Other grants through them could be renewable, yes.
Mm-hmm.
But this one, no. Because what they're trying to do is they're trying to get us up to where they want us to be. And they're hoping within that year we reach that goal.
Okay.
But that's why when I planned out what the money would be used for, I tried to be very specific about we wanted more capital, like long-term, like building in addition to the building would be something later that we wouldn't have to worry about, and tried to keep the lower amounts down. Because I think we could get away with probably 10,000 for the vet and the medications. That was my original. I threw the extra 10 in there just because we needed to put that money somewhere. So I would think that if anything on here would be something we'd have to take down the line, it would be that 10,000. And then the the software program for the vet, or the volunteer foster program.
Thank you.
Any other? Thank you both. Appreciate it.
Thank y'all very much.
Next item is a discussion regarding any other item that's on the regular agenda. Does anyone want to talk? Need a motion to adjourn the workshop?
So moved.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We'll go straight into the regular session if no one needs. We will take a short break, maybe 5 minutes. Be right back. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to open the regular session. I'll do a call to order. First item will be Chief Cummins will lead us in prayer.
Let us pray. Dear Heavenly Father, we come to you tonight grateful for the opportunity to meet openly, to conduct business for the city. And we just pray that you'll be with everyone in this building and as part of these proceedings, those that are presenting information, those that are making decisions. And we just hope that everything goes for the benefit of all of your people, which is your will. We are particularly grateful for this time of year, fresh start, a new year. We ask that you will watch over us in safety. We ask that you forgive us of our sins. And until we can meet again, as always, in Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Please join me in the pledges. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
First item we'll have is a swearing-in ceremony for our new officer, Trevor Johnston.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. It is my pleasure tonight to introduce to you our newest officer, Trevor Johnstone. Trevor started the academy as a self-sponsored cadet and just recently graduated. But during the academy, we picked him up, filled the position, a cadet position with him. I believe it important to mention that because when I say self-sponsored, that means that Trevor did everything to go to the academy on his own. He financed the academy. He went on his own time. And I think it's honorable and shows his drive and devotion to be a police officer. And I'm proud of him for that. A little bit about Trevor. Trevor lives here in Lampasas. He grew up here and is a 2019 graduate of Lampasas High School. Trevor told me when I asked him one time what led him to want to be a police officer, he said it was our very own high school Explorer program that led him to aspire to be a Lampasas police officer. Prior to being a police officer, Trevor worked 2 years with the prison as a prison guard. And so Trevor right now is in our field training program. We anticipate that he'll complete the training program and be out on the road taking calls on his own, hopefully by about April. To pin Trevor tonight is his mother, Juliet. Juliet, will you join us? Judge Goodell, will you administer the oath for Trevor, please? stay up there and, Dad, you want to get up there? Here, we'll take the picture for you. All right, thank you. Thank you. Good evening.
Thank you, thank you. Welcome to Lampasas. Next item is service recognition, and Yvonne could not be with us tonight, but we do want to honor her for her 25 years of service. Yvonne Marino. Next item, citizen comments. Any citizen who desires to address the city council on a matter that is not included on the agenda may do so at this time. City council may not deliberate on items presented under this agenda item. Next item, any citizen who wishes to address the city council on a matter that is on the agenda tonight may do so at this time. No one? We do have a public hearing to receive citizen comments regarding the proposed amendments to the Lampasas zoning ordinance, Chapter 3, zoning districts, height and area regulations specific to non-single family residential districts such as multifamily 2, apartments, office, retail, light and heavy industrial. Take a breath.
Council. Deep breath, right? Okay. So staff has been collecting data and reviewing height restriction regulations among other municipalities, as well as seeking guidance from the American Planning Association. The attached draft, which is on page 21, it does show how the other municipalities have regulated lot sizes and setbacks in relation to heights by district. The draft focuses mainly on multifamily apartments, commercial, retail, and industrial. At this time, there is no recommended amendments to the height restrictions to residential, as the max height is 2.5 stories, which is 35 feet. This draft was presented to the Planning Commission in September, as well as the City Council. Since that time, there's been no recommended amendments to the chart or to the draft since that time. I did submit this to my Planning Commission in December, and they have recommended approval.
Any comments from the public?
I got a dumb question for you. What's the O stand for, the third one down?
Office.
Okay. That's different than commercial?
Yes.
Okay.
We have commercial, office, retail, light industrial, and heavy industrial.
Gotcha.
Okay, we'll close the public hearing. Thank you, Becky.
Thank you.
Minutes, discussion and possible action concerning approval of minutes of the regular meeting held on December 12th, 2022.
I didn't see any corrections, recommend approval.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
And I abstained.
The consent agenda has 4 items. Discussion and possible action regarding purchases and charges in excess of $4,000 from December 1 through December 31, 2022. Discussion and possible action regarding the November 2022 investment report. Discussion and possible action regarding the second reading of an ordinance to consider approval, denial, or approval with modifications, the request to rezone property from Commercial C to Single-Family Residential 6, SF6, described as being the west 1/2 of Lot 1, Block 2, East Lampasas, Lampasas County, commonly known as 1001 Bridge Street. Discussion and possible action regarding the second reading of an ordinance to vacate, abandon, and convey .24 acres, 60 foot wide, of unopened Deb Lynn Street, east of South House Street, between Outlet 18 and Outlot 25 of the L.H. Johnson Survey, part of 1003 South House Street. Does anyone wish to remove any of those items?
Recommend approval of the consent agenda.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We have a Public Works Department report.
Good evening again, Mayor, Council. Before we dive into the Public Works Annual Report, I would like to just give some acknowledgement tonight. Wayne's here, as well as Van, her two managers, electric supervisor. Van's over water, wastewater. And I can't say enough for Robin White. She kind of keeps us all in check. She's our Public Works Administrator. If you've ever worked with Robin, she will kill you with kindness, just so you know. She's pretty awesome to work with. So, and she actually helped put this together. So, graphics and a lot of the different things in here. So, thank you again, Robin. We'll start with the wastewater department, water and wastewater. And I thought it would be a good idea this year. And Robin took pictures of all the guys. I thought it's good to put some faces out there with some names and what these folks do. In and out throughout the year with all the different weather events we have and other things that impact the city. Everybody in Public Works puts in numerous hours of overtime effort to try to make sure that we're keeping streets open, we're picking up debris. Wayne's team's keeping the lights on, and Van's team's making sure we have some water. So it's pretty critical, the infrastructure that Public Works manages for the city. So I can't say enough about the teams we have. Just wanted to go over our mission in each group. So for water, wastewater, to provide the citizens of Lampasas reliable and cost-effective water and wastewater services through excellence in operations, customer service, environmental compliance, and organizational development. We're committed to providing superior water services to our community. As you can see there, Van Sims, who's our operations manager, 12 years. And one thing I will note as we go through here and we have individuals' years of service, one of the things that really stood out to me here in Lampasas is there's not a lot of attrition from these groups, so we're not losing a lot of folks. A lot of people are, here for the long haul, and I think that speaks volumes for the different teams. Brandon Kepler, who's our utility supervisor, as well as Richard Cox, he's our construction crew leader, 12 and 6 years respectively. Derek Eicher, utility tech, 7 years. And if y'all know Chris Eicher, this is Chris's son, so he's definitely a good guy. Anthony Reza, utility technician, 1 year, and we were lucky to hire Glenn Chisholm not long after I was onboarded with the city as a utility technician. He brought a lot of experience with him as well. Stephen Sewell, our plant supervisor of 10 years, the brains of the operation for sure. He's really one of those guys I enjoy speaking with, knows a lot about the plant operations. He has 10 years in, numerous certifications. J.D. Wilkes, plant operator, 4 years. Aaron Weiser, plant operator at 9 years. One of the things that I wanted to speak a little on, because I know it's been important to council, as we look through, I guess, mid-year as we did the COLAs and we looked at comparisons with other cities, but certification pay was brought up, and I think it's critical, the training that each group has and the certifications that they need to manage, our different infrastructure pieces. And in this instance, as you can see on there, there's water distribution Class D, all the way down to different classes of CDLs. But if you notice on the years of experience required, a lot of these take multiple years to get the first certification and then multiple years to get the next one and so forth. And I think in today's, job environment that it's critical that we look at some of the things that they bring to the table. As you can see, the number of certified staff, and I won't read all those, but we have a lot of really qualified individuals that work in the group and on that team. So I thought it'd be good to spend just a minute on our water annual budget. And I basically showed two different budget categories, which was maintenance as well as capital improvements. Those are kind of the two critical things that each team does. And the thing that I highlighted on this one is water tank maintenance this year on the Kempner, actually Georgetown tank, was where the most, as far as funding, was allocated, about $251,000. And then probably the next budget item that was about $127,000 was meter replacements. That's the purchase of meters, digital meters. As far as capital improvements, the water extension upgrades, we set aside about $100,000 to do that. These extensions are for looping projects as well as offsetting CDBG matches and funding. One thing I would like to circle back on the maintenance budget, our water systems budget at $123,000 is one of the core kind of items that does your day in, day out, repairing leaks, fire hydrant placement, line extensions, making taps. So that's a pretty critical item. As far as sewer collection annual budget, sewer systems, which is, again, really similar to the water, which is replacement and repairs. As far as, manhole rehab, there's a lot of different factors to that. That's budgeted at about $52,000, and that's the highest item under maintenance. Our total budget's $114,000. And I know council knows what those budgets are, but sometimes I think it's good to kind of put that in perspective on what we use and what we do. The capital improvement is $165,000 with $100,000 in sewer extension and upgrades. Again, rehabbing and upsizing, replacement of wastewater lines, as well as CDBG match for our infrastructure. In sewer plant annual budget, as I mentioned with Stephen's team, there's a lot that goes into maintaining the infrastructure at the plant. And the biggest dollar amount is $125,000 we spend on equipment, but that's a wide range of things. It's replacing pumps or rebuilding pumps. The belt press, improving it. We did a gate replacement this year. It's just the day in, day out things that the plant goes through to make sure that we're managing those things and we're doing the routine maintenance to keep things operational properly. And then the capital improvements budget of $45,000 is for equipment. So there's a ultraviolet probe that comes under this item, controllers, SCADA upgrades, a couple different items that fall under that. In projects for this year, and this doesn't capture everything that we've done, but it is some of the larger projects. So the Georgetown tank rehabilitation, waterline relocation at 3rd Street and Western, total petroleum, hydrocarbon testing at oil states and tennis court lift stations, replace 2 clarifier control gates at the wastewater treatment plant, as I mentioned, replace 2 control valves, Willis Street lift station, 400-foot of sewer line extension in the alley at Willis Street and 6th Street, and I can say that was almost solid rock. We actually had to rent another piece of equipment to get in there to finish that project, and it was fairly deep for that line. 200-foot of water line replacement on Dent Street. Our Avenue C CDBG block grant sewer line replacement, and that was a success. That was quite a bit of sewer line on Avenue C. Repaired 4th Street lift station force main, repaired 12 lift station pumps, and 20 lead and copper samples that's required every 3 years. And that, the actual picture there is the upper pressure plane study that Jones Heroy has done for us. I thought that was kind of a neat picture just to show, the different areas of town and kind of how that impacts as far as the upper pressure plane. Work orders this year, that team does a really good job keeping up with the various things that are going on as far as work orders. But as you can see, line locates are where we spend a substantial amount of time. Brandon Kepler is usually the one working with Robin, who takes the line locates in to go out in the field and do the best we can possibly do by locating water, sewer lines for either construction projects or if people are digging when they call 811. Water leaks is the next highest work order. But as you can see, this year we had less, so you know the team's doing a really good job. So we've had a good year on that, even flushing the water lines lower than the previous year. Sewer backup stayed about the same. New water taps, we still have some development going on, but seeing that slow down a little bit. And the meter change out program, as we've been busy with projects, sometimes that project gets a little bit slower. And then new sewer taps is pretty consistent year in, year out. Any questions on water, wastewater so far? Okay. The electric department. So here's our team. Our mission statement is to provide the citizens of Lampasas with safe and reliable power at an affordable price. We strive to provide prompt service while continuously growing through technology and training. And we've had some pretty good events this year that I think this speaks volumes to, where we were out late at night chasing down lines from Naruna, trying to figure out why we don't have power in half of the town after we had an event, storm event. And they were diligent, tracked it down. Wayne's team really spent some time making sure that folks had electricity as quick as possible. Here's our electric team. So we have Wayne Sanders, superintendent, 30 years. K.A. Morris, who is our newest employee there. He's electric crew supervisor. So this year with Flint leaving, Wayne stepped up to that role. K.A. was hired as a lineman, and he's taken the lead and done a great job. And so he's our new electric crew supervisor. Raymond Roberts, lineman for 25 years. Justin McDonald, lineman 9 years. Micah Harry, lineman 8 years. Thomas Kelly's an apprentice 3. And Kyle Harrison's apprentice 2, 3 years. And those go back, let me skip to this next one real quick. These actually tie to those certifications that we were talking about. Again, the electric team has a lot of certifications or licenses they must maintain, and they have to pass certain tests to be in the role that they're in and be qualified as a lineman or whatever the role is. And we have the number of staff certified, years of experience required. You can see on there the introductory 6 months, and the rest are year after year to move into that next line worker. So, you know, a lot of experience and a lot of work goes into keeping those certifications. And you know, I think you can't stress enough the danger that our public works teams are in. But electricity is one of the ones I kind of shy away from. Done a lot of electrical work over the years, and I'm smart enough to know that's probably not where I need to be. So they do a great job at that. So our annual budget maintenance is $298,000. And electric systems, again, similar to water, wastewater, is where the bulk of our funding sits, about $160,000. And this is to repair lines, switches, fuses, poles, various operation of the electrical system and improvements. And our annual capital improvement budget is $101,000, and everything sits in that electrical system. So this is new development. As you've seen around town, there's a lot of subdivisions. We actually, Wayne's team, we had to get a contractor to work on the CEFCO probably maybe a month ago, maybe not that long. So the transformer was leaking. It was a pad mount and very costly. Those things cost a lot of money. Transformers have gotten high along with everything else that we have to purchase. So Wayne did a really good job finding somebody that could come in. I think they said it's about $25,000 a day if they're down for 24 hours at CEFCO. So we had a team come in and get it taken care of. So projects this year, and again, this doesn't capture everything, but moved existing lines at Turner Field, installed a new line at Grace Fellowship, repaired leaking transformer that I'd mentioned at CEFCO, which was substantial. Brody Estate subdivision electrical system installation. That subdivision's actually underground, so pad-mounted transformers. Kind of the direction we'd like to go in the future is as much as we can put underground. That saves us from maintenance of overhead in storms or those types of things. Hidden Oak subdivision, electrical system installation. Campbell Park Pavilion. Council Chambers streetlights. They actually poured the foundations for those and stood those poles up and wired those in. Hoff Power charging stations, 503 South Pecan, and LED light change out. So that's just to clarify too, on the light change out, as we have street lights that go out, we replace those with the new LED, fixture heads. And that's kind of how we've been, trying to improve not only the night skylight, but it does cut down. They don't use near as much electricity, so, moving that to LEDs is really the way to go. Work orders this year, as you can kind of see a trend. The line locates again are where we spend a lot of time. Raymond Roberts has done a good job of going out day in and day out, fielding those 811 calls and marking. Pole sets and poles changed out, fairly similar. Pole sets, haven't set quite as many this year as we did last year. Service upgrade connects, very similar, a little less than the prior year. New service connects, very, very close year in, year out. Temp service connects, which follows development a little bit down this year. LED lights, we've exchanged or swapped out more of those. And overtime call-outs, while it's a little bit less this year, they've been pretty significant on the ones that we've been called out to. So something to always keep in mind. 1,229 work orders this year. On to our street department. So our mission here is fairly straightforward, but it's to provide safety, connectivity, and mobility while maintaining and improving city-owned streets, rights-of-way, and drainage appurtenances. The safety and the welfare of our citizens and the general public is our highest priority, and you can see the team there. Spend a lot of time repairing potholes, cleaning out storm drains, the day in, day out routine maintenance. Carlos Garcia is our superintendent. He's been here 18 years. Joe Levine is a crew leader, promoted to crew leader this year, 15 years. Mike White, one of our crew leaders, 14 years. Brian Hall, light equipment operator for 10 years. Jonathan Guerrera, 4 years as a light equipment operator. Cody Kepler, light equipment operator for 4 years. And our newest member of the streets team, Adrian Torres, light equipment operator for 6 months. And the maintenance budget for the street department, as you'll notice, is a little less than obviously water and electric. And so, with the budget that they have, they do really good work and really stay on top of things. This year, when I get into the projects, we'll go over a few of the roads that we've done. But as far as our street maintenance budget is $40,000, which is the one I've got highlighted, where we basically purchase base material, hot mix, cold mix, anything that we need as far as day in, day out maintenance. And something that I wanted to note, we actually turned in our grader. The lease was up this year, and I know council's aware of that, but that's something that we'll move the $88,000 that we got back from that lease to buy the loader when it comes in next year at some point. Loader's one of the critical pieces of equipment that they use day in and day out. As far as capital improvements, 960,000, those are typically roadway projects like Third Street that we did this year. So that capital improvement number is fairly large. We also spent about 385,000 on paving. So we had a contractor come in this year, do mill inlay, overlays with asphalt pavement. Let's see. So to go over projects, aside from the day in, day out routine maintenance that we do, seal coat miles, and these are typically lane miles that we're putting in here, so that would be the miles in both directions. So we did 3.18 miles of seal coat this year, and that's done in-house. We purchased the asphalt that we shoot, we have the rock, and we've identified the roads that we did this year. We're working on our list for this next year to keep that going. Asphalt pavement miles that we did this year, as I mentioned with the contractors, about 2.5 lane miles, 2.5. We did 15 tons in brush chipping, and that's one of the things that in the future will, as we, if development happens around the Public Works compound there, we would need to probably purchase a tub grinder. We would have to get away with our TCEQ permit from burning. We wouldn't be able to do that because we'd be too close if they build houses out there. So something to keep in mind. That's on our CIP list already. We established the Payzer rating system, which had been done years prior, went back, and that'll be something that we'll do year in, year out, go back and revisit all the roads. As we paved and updated some of these roadways, we're keeping record in our GIS system, so we'll know, and it'll change that scoring factor that we've got in the Payzer rating, so we're tracking that now in GIS. We've spent quite a bit of time on the business park as far as inspections go. Mike White did a great job. Mike Blair also spent a lot of time out there at the business park making sure that the contractor was following the plans. And then the Third Street project inspection, which we did in-house. Carlos and Blair probably spent the most time out there, myself. So these were some of the larger projects this year. Work orders this year, 117. And that's, as you can see, street repairs is up. We've done more work orders on that. Trim trees, hauling brush is up, street cleanup. Potholes stayed about the same, which is, that's always a good sign that you've got a good pavement program if the potholes are staying the same or less. Street signs, we did put out more signs and street sweeping than we did last year, as well as cleaning drainage ways. That's probably the biggest complaint that I get from citizens is our drainage ways, or lack thereof, in some of the older areas of town that are set pretty low elevation wise. So something we try to stay on top of. Then our Citizens Collection Center. It's to provide the citizens of Lampasas an alternative solution for removal of debris and recycled material from their property locally, eliminating the need to travel out of the city limits to dispose of the material. And I thought it was kind of neat. This is actually on our website. It shows the items accepted, so it's kind of, you know, not your day in, day out trash, but construction debris, brush, leaves, grass, appliances with no Freon, batteries, scrap metal, and tires. And we have Priscilla West. She's been with us 7 months. She manages the collection center along with Robin. A lot of times Robin's filling in for her. Tricia Eicher also fills in sometimes out there. But the revenue collected approximately $34,100 this year. The collection station and what we paid out, and you can see the haul charge number there at $331.51 is where a bulk of that money is spent. Is hauling it per ton, $34.29, and the tons that we collected, 244. The recycle center was $16,370, and again, it's the haul charge, 42 hauls, so there was less hauls. It's not quite as big of a bin either, so it's not as large. And then $54.41 a ton. So recycled goods have gone up. A lot of places won't take recycled goods anymore, so the cost has increased, and the tons collected was 32 this year. And this is a breakdown of what we've seen as far as comparison for construction debris collected. We actually had 3 years of data here, so you can see it's escalated. We also introduced a little bit different process this year, well into the year, where we were monitoring a little closer. We made a few changes out there, so I think the numbers probably reflect that. 32 tons recycled compared to a couple years ago where it was 13, so an increase kind of all around there at the collection center. And I'll stand for any questions. And that picture was pretty neat. That's from the video cameras that we had at Brook Park. I stole that off of one of them.
Anyone have any questions or comments for Ryan? Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item is City Manager's Operational Report.
Evening, Mayor and Council. Just a few brief comments on the memo that was included in your packet. West First Street, they are, I believe, almost complete with paving. They may not have pulled the barricades at this time, but they were actually putting hot mix down, spreading it this evening on West First Street. Police Department just wanted to report that, our staffing is in reasonably decent shape, and certainly we're glad to have Trevor on board. We also want to announce that Delana Fritz, who is currently a dispatcher, communications officer, has accepted the position of officer cadet, so she'll be attending school starting in January. Skate Park, I think Ryan hit on that in terms of the signage as well as when they're getting started. Should be on the ground next Wednesday. Freeze repairs, I think we've talked about this briefly, but I think both Van and Chris will probably come back and want to investigate and then visit with council about some more robust heating, maybe insulation for some of their areas. And it certainly wasn't for a lack of effort. The space heaters only went so far when that temperature drops that quickly and that far down. So evaluations, we wanted to warm council up to this to see if you had any input. Typically you would direct that we set up evaluations of appointed officials. Those appointed officials would be municipal judge, city secretary, city manager. I'd remind you, your city attorney is also an appointed official. She works on a contract basis, and because she's not an employee, I don't believe we've ever done that, as far as you can tell. But we would be happy to do that, one at a meeting for the next several meetings, do several at a time, or do one or two in particular if the council wanted to go that route. But we do seek your input regarding the agenda setting for those items. Welcome sign, again, this is something else we've previously reported on. We wanted to let you know that it is moving forward. As a reminder, we talked to council about the city's potential obligation in terms of relocating the fence line so that the monument could be placed, as well as pouring the footings. We've gotten great support from Vision, as well as Libby Blunser, Bill Metzger, Ron and Sue Ellen Bumpus, who've spent a lot of their personal time on this project, as well as the entire Vision crew. The gateway signage is cited as an objective in the comprehensive plan as well. As that project moves forward, we will certainly keep council informed on it, and without objection, we'll proceed with the city's inputs to that project. Christmas lights should be down. I think to dovetail some of the comments regarding vandalism, Chris believes wholeheartedly, and I think Ryan does too, that cameras were a deterrent to vandalism. At one point we sat around and said, well, could the city buy 2 or 3 of those units, and for example, in the summertime, move them to a pool or move them to a ballpark, or keep one at 580 and just keep them constantly rotated. Several years ago, we did kind of an A to Z program that I know Monica spent a great deal of time on and looked at, and we'd certainly be happy to roll back out maybe a number of different options for council to take a look at, as well as provide us direction on. So we'll plan on doing that based on comments we've heard, as well as based on the success of of the cameras that we've had. Fire Department, just wanted to report, Chief Smith has circulated the emergency management plan to director-level staff for input. It's not really considered a rewrite, it's an update. We're trying to make sure the correct positions are identified in terms of the title and the person currently in those positions. Just as a reminder, it does outline staff elected official responsibilities, span of control and communications, among other things. And once the draft is updated, Chief Smith will come and visit with council about that. EMS report, that's included. Just of note, the city response time on average in the month of December was 4 minutes, 53 seconds. Total number of calls in the city was 182, which represented 58% of the total calls in Lampasas County. TxDOT pre-app, we just wanted to let you know that we will be submitting a preliminary application to TxDOT for transportation alternatives. This deals primarily with bikeway improvement, shared use pass, pedestrian improvements, and as you can tell, potentially trails, which is something that's obviously identified in our comp plan. So hopefully if we're selected, then we'll move forward on that. In terms of the match, there is the possibility of getting the match waived or replaced in some form or fashion, but we'll keep you up to date on that, and hopefully Ryan is going to put together a very good application and we'll get selected for the next step. Relief route, just a reminder, we will be talking about that on January 23rd. TxDOT planning staff have been invited and they have confirmed their attendance. So we'll be working on kind of the format, who's going to go first, who's going to go second, how you want the public engaged, and certainly we're pleased that there is this much interest in the relief route. We have holidays closings attached. Want to, as was recognized, not only Yvonne Moreno for 25 years, but Shanda Subia started her career in December with the city of Lampasas, and she is 16 years. Just another quick note, the legislature's in session. And what we're seeing in terms of bills that have been filed, it's kind of along the same lines as what we see every year. We think that with some of the things that were going on in our economy, as well as inflation, et cetera, they might take a break and work on taking that huge surplus that they had and trying to get schools funded, or maybe doing some other projects, but just hold on. It's always this time. It's always like this when the legislature's in session. Certainly there are a lot of good things that happen. There's a lot of things that we'd like to keep an eye on. I will be out of the office Thursday and Friday. Be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Finley. I have no comments, so we'll move on into new business. 7.1, discussion and possible action regarding a joint election agreement between the Lampasas Independent School District and the City of Lampasas.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. You will see in your packet that we have the same joint election agreement that we've had in previous years. As 2007, the city, the county, and the school district have all joined together and done it at the same time. The agreement is essentially the same, with the exception of the dates. The agreement for the city and LISD will share the expenses of the early voting election day shared voting locations, ballot programming, payroll of election workers, and other costs common to both elections. I normally will have the joint election the same with the county. I do not have that available this evening, but I will present at the 23rd meeting, and that will identify our expenses that we will have to incur during the May election. So at this time, I'm asking to consider a motion to approve the joint election agreement between the Lampasas Independent School District and the City of Lampasas and authorize the mayor to execute the related document.
I move to approve the joint election agreement between the Lampasas Independent School District and the City of Lampasas and authorize the mayor to execute the related document.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Are there any questions from Becky? Have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Next item is discussion and consider the selection of the winner of the website photo contest. We have one entry.
Recommend approval.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
That was a toughie.
7.3, discussion and possible action regarding the first reading of an ordinance to modify Appendix A, feed schedule, Public Works, electric security light installation fee.
Mayor and council, this was one that Wayne Sanders, our electric superintendent, had brought to my attention. The new, and this one's pretty straightforward, the new fixtures that we're using for security lights actually cost $181.65, up from our previous where we were charging $100. So the 185 is in direct relationship to that. We're still providing basically the labor, the vehicle. It's 2 staff members go out there. We say an hour, sometimes it's less, sometimes it could be a little bit more with a vehicle. But that was the ask, is to make sure that we have the ability to cover those fixtures.
I move to approve the first reading of the ordinance to amend Appendix A, fee schedule, Chapter 82, utilities, Article 5, rates, charges, and billing procedures, Section F, electric service rates, Number 7, security lights, SL. A, initial charge for installation per light from $100 to $185.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Are there any questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. 7.4, discussion and possible action regarding the first reading of an ordinance to modify the City of Lampasas personnel policy, employee responsibilities, uniform allowances, meal allowances, standby duty hourly pay, and public service hours.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This one came up, as I mentioned earlier, kind of in the same scenario when we were doing kind of the comps and looking at various other cities. Some of these things came directly from staff that they brought to my attention, what we had in policy. So I took some time out to go back through some of the critical things, which the first one was Section 2.04, uniforms. Whereas before, we gave the employee $150 that was reimbursable for boots. So directly related to boots, they could go out, purchase them wherever. The problem now is, and one of the gentlemen that works over there at the wastewater plant, he just paid $300 for boots. Boots have escalated. The required ANSI standard boots have obviously gone up like everything else. So we wanted to make sure we were capturing that, basically allow $200 and allow either a reimbursable charge, or if we have an account set up or use of the purchasing card, or how we determine to cover that as far as for the employee on the city behalf. I think it's really important because as we have younger people coming in, there's sometimes the need when this is PPE, so it's your protective equipment that's required. And sometimes if you're starting a new job and you're young, you may or may not have the money, so we wanted to make sure we covered kind of both bases, either reimbursable or the city would pay for it. So that was uniforms, and then the second thing that we had under the uniforms was the replacement provision. So for their winter wear, typically this pertains to Public Works, but also Parks falls under this. Anybody that works outside. So basically, the existing provision is once every 3 years, the employee will be provided with one of the following. And the one thing I want to stress is it's once every 3 years. So you can either pick a coat, you could pick coveralls, or you could pick a bib, which is just kind of the, one strap coverall. And so what I did was I went back, I talked to several of the managers, talked to staff, and that was one of the things, depending on what you're doing. So if you're working for water, wastewater, and you're digging up a line in the middle of the winter, your coveralls can get torn up, can get dirty. 3 years is a long time. Depending on if we have winter weather this year so far, knock on wood, it's been fairly mild. But so the real intent of this was to make sure we're covering every other year is what's proposed. The employee will either have the option to get a coat and bib, so the coat would go over the bibs, or you can get the full coveralls if approved by the department head. So a maximum of $300 is allowed for the department purchase or reimbursement of outerwear, and $400 for fire-resistant outerwear. So our electricians, linemen, those guys have to have FR. They don't have a choice. Their outerwear has to be FR rated, which are significantly higher. I did put a note in here that typically FR jackets range from $150 to $280. The bibs range from $169 to $350. I searched the internet, Amazon, looked at a couple different stores just to try to get an idea of what are we really looking at. And then the regular jackets are $70 to $150, and bibs are about $120 to $200. So, if you were to get reimbursed, you would just get up to that amount, even if they cost a little bit more. The other item, Section 611, one of the things that was brought to my attention is standby duty and work schedule and time reporting. So our existing provision for the folks that are on call, which typically we have either sometimes it's a single person like in streets on call, sometimes there's double water, wastewater have on-call folks for the plant, for field operations. They actually work a on-call shift for 7 days straight. The 5 days that's in there would be your typical week, but the reality is they stay on call 24/7 for 7 days. And so the proposed replacement provision would reflect that compensation for an additional 7 hours of work instead of the 5 for the 7 days, so an hour a day is what we were proposing. And then the last thing is it's Section 19.04, allowance for meals under Section 19.00, travel and expense reimbursement. I've got a chart on there for the existing, but basically currently it's a full day is $40. We hadn't necessarily kept up with per diem of what's actually out there now, whether it's state or federal. So what I referenced, breakfast for the proposed is $14, lunch is $20, dinner is $30, so a full day is $64, which is currently the federal rate standard, with exceptions to higher costing cities like Houston, Dallas, some of those. But that would be the flat cost, and I'll stand for any questions.
Move to approve the first reading of the ordinance of the City Council of the City of Lampasas, Texas, amending Ordinance 1540, which adopted the 2017 City of Lampasas Personnel Policy Manual, Section 2.00, Employee Responsibilities, Section 2.04, Uniforms, Section 6.00, Work Schedule and Time Reporting, Section 6.11, Standby Duty, Section 8.00, Leave Time, Section 8.08, Public Service, Section 19.00, Travel Expense Reimbursement, Section 19.04, Allowance for Meals, repealing conflicting ordinances and/or city policies, including a severability clause, and establishing an effective date.
Seconded.
I have a motion and second. Does anyone have any questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Seven 7.5, discussion and possible action regarding Best Friends Animal Society providing grant funding to Lampasas Animal Shelter through a mentorship with the Williamson County Regional Animal Shelter.
Council, this item was discussed briefly during the workshop. This is the grant opportunity that they have with Best Friends Society. And as allocated on here, it kind of shows you the breakdown of how the grants will be provided. So you have payment number 1 will be in January of 2023 for $34,400. Payment number 2 is May of 2023 for $25,800. Payment number 3 will be in September for $25,800. And then the bonus would be $9,000 for a potential total of $95,000 overall for this grant opportunity. Again, they will be working as a mentorship with Williamson County Regional Animal Shelter, and it'll be provided through the Best Friends Society.
I move to approve the Lampasas Animal Shelter entering into an agreement with Best Friends Animal Society to provide grant funding through a mentorship with the Williamson County Regional Animal Shelter and to allow the city manager to execute any required documents.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Are there any questions or comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. 7.6, discussion and possible action regarding proposal for professional services between the City of Lampasas and Jones Heroy and Associates for Spring Street Pump Station conversion to inline booster station to include design, bidding, and construction phase in an amount not to exceed $25,000.
Mayor, council, this item was actually tied to the upper pressure plane water system improvement. This is kind of a first step, this proposal, and was tied to the November 2022 preliminary engineering report by Jones Heroy. We actually have Jason tonight with us from Jones Heroy, who provided us the study. One of the things that that this includes, I won't read all the different things, but again, the breakdown of scope is and covers kickoff meetings, conducting a site visit, tie into our existing SCADA system and design for that, preparing necessary plan specifications and contract documents, providing quality assurance and quality control, coordinating through the review of the project plans and specifications, and prepare submittal to Texas Commission on Environmental Quality, or TCEQ, and to request approval of a rule exception to allow for inline booster pump station. Also, some of the other tasks, which would be bidding and construction phase services. Jones Heroy will assist the city with direct solicitation of written bids from a list of agreed-upon contractors. And upon receipt of written bids, Jones Heroy will prepare written recommendations to the city for the award and the construction of the contract. Qualifications and availability to meet schedule. Jones Heroy will assist the city during construction and test phasing as needed to ensure the project is completed successfully. There's also additional services that would be above and beyond that. The basis is $25,000 to do those items specifically and to come up with a design that we can use and put out for bids.
I got one comment.
Let's go ahead and get a motion, Herb, if you don't mind, and then we'll comment afterwards.
Make a motion to approve the proposal for professional services between the City of Lampasas and Jones Heroy and Associates for Spring Street Pump Station conversion to inline booster station to include design, bidding, and construction phase in an amount not to exceed $25,000.
Second.
Okay, go ahead.
My comment was, it's almost the end of the first quarter. TCU 7, Georgia 10.
So it's close, that's good.
It's close.
Thank you for the update.
Yes, thank you for that. Do we have any other comments or concerns? I have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thanks.
Thank you.
7.7, discussion and possible action regarding the first reading of an ordinance to consider approval, denial, or approval with modifications to the proposed amendment to the Lampasas zoning ordinance, Chapter 3, zoning districts, height and area regulations specific to non-single family residential districts, such as multifamily 2 apartments, office, retail, light, and heavy industrial.
Mayor and council, this item was discussed during public hearing, and at this time I'm asking for a consideration of approval, denial, or approval of modifications to an ordinance to proposed amendments for the Lampasas zoning ordinance, Chapter 3, zoning districts, height and area regulations specific to non-single family residential districts, such as multifamily 2 apartments, office, retail, light industrial, and heavy industrial as presented.
I motion to approve the first reading of an ordinance regarding the proposed amendments to the Lampasas zoning ordinance Chapter 3, zoning districts, height and area regulations specific to non-single-family residential districts such as multifamily 2 apartments, office, retail, light, and heavy industrial as presented in the packet.
Have a motion and a second. Are there any concerns, questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thank you.
Thank you. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.